Hey guys, welcome to Journey of Relaxation. Tonight we step into a dusty field where even a god like Apollo can start at the bottom herding cows for a grumpy farmer. Imagine the sun beating down dust swirling in the air and you standing there armed with nothing but a crooked staff and a slightly confused expression. You probably won't survive this without some bruises or a fresh dose of humility. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your location. And local time in the comments makes these stories feel a little less lonely, don't you think? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge out of the shadows of Mount Olympus, or at least what passes for it, when you're temporarily demoted from sun god to lowly cowherd, and step into the world of rural Earth. It's a far cry from your usual sun-drenched chariot rides and music-filled banquets. Instead, you face a landscape filled with bleating cows and the unmistakable smell of cow dung baked under the midday sun. Welcome to Apollo's unexpected cowherd job. The farmer, a stocky man with arms like tree trunks and a glare that could melt stone, hands you a twisted wooden staff. No divine lightning bolt today, just this crooked stick, and the implicit warning in his eyes: mess up and you're out. The irony isn't lost on you. The god of prophecy reduced to cow-herding grunt labor. Historians still argue whether Apollo ever actually did this in myth, or if it's more of a cheeky metaphor for gods getting a taste of mortal toil. Your first task: gather the cows into a loose herd. Simple, right? Except cows have their own minds and zero respect for godly status. They moo like they're organizing a protest and amble in every direction except the one you want. You wave the staff. Try a few soothing words you remember from an old farmer's tale. Come along, ladies, time to mosey. But they just stare back, chewing cud like you're the one causing the nuisance. You can almost feel the dust in your nostrils as you adjust to this new rhythm, one that involves less divine decree and more patience. As the sun climbs higher, your fingers itch to summon the sun itself to remind these beasts who's boss. But you hold back. You're on probation. One wrong move and it's game over. Quirky bit. Did you know that in some ancient cultures, cow dung was actually used as a form of sunscreen? Imagine slathering yourself with that before heading out under the blazing sun. Not exactly the glamorous image of a god, right? But it worked. Historians still argue whether such practices were widespread or localized farmers' hacks. As the morning stretches, you learn quickly that this is not a job for the impatient or the proud. You're sweating, cursing your choice to accept this odd gig, and wondering if the muses would still sing your praises if they saw you now. So here you are standing in the field, the low hum of cicadas in your ears, and a herd that might just be plotting your downfall. The morning sun rises sharper now, slicing through the dust and making everything glow with that harsh, unforgiving light that only early summer can bring. You stand amid the herd, the cows all around you, their warm breath steaming slightly in the cool morning air. The field smells of earthgrass and a faint hint of wildflowers, if you ignore the more pungent undercurrents of cow business. It's your first real test, wrangling these stubborn beasts into some kind of order. You trudge along, waving your crooked staff like a conductor trying to tame a wild orchestra of mooing instruments. The cows, however, seem to have formed their own opinion about your leadership skills, mainly that they don't care. One especially grumpy old cow who you secretly name Gertrude stomps her hoof and gives you a look that screams, "You're new here, huh?" The farmer watches you from a distance, arms crossed expression like he's biting back a curse. No words of encouragement, just the occasional grunt that means, move faster, or I'll have to do it myself. You feel the pressure mounting, sweat slicking your brow, and your usual divine confidence deflates slightly. This isn't your usual stage of divine grandeur. Wrangling cows isn't as simple as it looks in the myths. You quickly learn the art of gentle nudging, loud shouting, and occasionally bribing with handfuls of fresh grass. You try a few herding calls you heard from old shepherd tales, a low rhythmic chant that's supposed to soothe the herd, but the cows just blink unimpressed. A calf nearby catches your attention with a cheeky leap over a small mound, clearly testing the boundaries of the herd and your patience. Historians still argue whether ancient cowherds ever developed formal calls or signals, or if it was all trial and error, much like your current predicament. You're about to find out which side of the argument you're on. You start noticing the subtle signs, the way a cow's ears twitch, how their tails flick to show irritation or curiosity. It's like trying to read a foreign language with no dictionary. You realize herding cows is part animal psychology, part endurance test, and part luck. Amid the chaos, you spot an old leather pouch hanging from your belt. Filled with tiny tokens, the farmer gave you little charms, supposedly to keep the cattle calm. You give one a quick rub, half hoping for a miracle, half wondering if it's just superstition. The ancient cow-herding rituals included all sorts of odd objects and chants, many lost to time, but fascinating enough to make you wonder if some magic still lingers in the mundane. As the sun climbs higher, the herd starts to move as a single mass, slowly but unmistakably. You're beginning to think you might just survive this morning after all. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient herders believed cows could sense the future. They'd watch the herd's behavior for omens of good harvest or bad weather. Imagine getting stock tips from a group of mooing cows. By midday, your arms ache from waving the staff, your throat is dry from shouting commands, and you're halfway to accepting that this job might actually be tougher than wielding a golden lyre or commanding the sun chariot. The farmer's stern eyes never leave you, and you realize you've got a lot more to prove than you thought. By now, you're beginning to understand that herding cows is less about waving your arms dramatically, and more about mastering a rather peculiar toolkit, one that blends the practical with the mystical in ways only a god-turned cowherd could truly appreciate. First, there's the obvious, your crooked wooden staff, which looks like it was carved from a rejected tree branch, but somehow serves as your primary instrument of command. It's not exactly a magic wand, but you find that its weight and length give you some leverage to nudge the more stubborn cows or keep wandering calves from straying too far. The staff quickly becomes an extension of your arm, even if you're still figuring out how to use it without accidentally poking yourself in the shin. Next, there's the farmer's ancient whistle, small, made of bone, and worn smooth from decades of use. When you blow it, it emits a sharp, piercing note that somehow slices through the mooing chaos and gets a few heads to turn. Not all cows respond, though, especially Gertrude, who seems to interpret the whistle as a personal insult. You also carry a leather pouch filled with little charms and talismans, tiny tokens carved from bone, wood, and stone. The farmer swore these were traditional cow-herding relics, designed to calm the herd and protect you from their unpredictable moods. You give them a quick rub now, and then half in hope, half in superstition. Oddly enough, you can't deny a slight easing in the herd's restlessness after you do, but that could be placebo or the herd's confusion at your antics. Historians still argue whether such charms were actually effective or merely psychological comfort for the herders themselves. Some ancient texts even mention cowherds whispering prayers to local spirits or making offerings to ensure a peaceful day. You find yourself mumbling a quick line to Pan, please keep these beasts from turning into stampedes, and wondering if he's eavesdropping. Among your tools is also a leather satchel with handfuls of fresh grass and wild herbs. You use this as a bribe, offering tasty morsels to coax the cows in the right direction. It's a delicate balance, too much bribery, and they'll expect a feast every time. Too little, and you risk a mutiny of hooves. Quirky bit. Some ancient cowherds used strange powders made from crushed bones, or dried plants, sprinkling them on the herd to enchant or protect them. The idea that cowherding was as much about ritual as muscle probably sounds strange now, but in a way it makes sense. Herding was a high-stakes job tied to survival. As the day progresses, you become increasingly aware that your divine powers don't translate well into cowherding skills. No sun chariot or lyre solos here, just grunt work, stubborn animals, and an ever-watchful farmer. Still, there's something grounding in this odd mixture of the mystical and the mundane. At one point, you even attempt a little musical flourish with your lyre, hoping to soothe the herd with a tune. The result: a confused cow or two look at you like you've lost your mind, and Gertrude promptly walks away. Maybe music really is the food of love, but definitely not of cows. You can't help but think back to your grand mythic exploits healing prophecy art, and realize this cowherding gig demands a different kind of heroism, patience, endurance, and the humbling acceptance that some days, even gods get their hands dirty. The farmer's presence looms larger now, like an unshakable shadow cast by your every move. His eyes, sharp and unforgiving, never seem to leave your back. He's the kind of man who'd frown at sunlight if it dared to shine too brightly on his fields. You get the distinct feeling that divine status means precisely nothing here. This is a world ruled by grit and pragmatism. He calls you over with a grunt and lays down some stern instructions, his voice gravelly like a worn-out axe. No slip-ups, he says. You lose the herd, you lose the job. No divine excuses. His warning hangs heavy in the air, as unyielding as the sun beating down on the dusty earth. This isn't some mythical trial of strength or wit, it's the real deal. Your failures will have consequences, and no ambrosia or eternal youth will save you if you mess up. You begin to appreciate the farmer's tough love. He's seen cowherds come and go like seasons, and patience isn't one of his virtues. Historians still argue whether the concept of employment existed in ancient rural societies as we understand it, or if such roles were more communal and less formalized. But in your case, it sure feels like a job interview on steroids with your very pride on the chopping block. The farmer's warnings make your pulse quicken. One misstep, one stray cow slipping through the gate, and you'll be packing your divine bags. You catch yourself rehearsing the mantra, steady hand, steady herd. The farmer also gives you a quick rundown on the consequences of negligence, fines, punishment, and the loss of reputation. In some regions, losing livestock wasn't just a personal failure. It could doom entire families to hunger. The weight of that responsibility presses on your shoulders, a far cry from the carefree days of strumming your lyre on Mount Olympus. Quirky tidbit. In some ancient herding cultures, failing your duties could lead to ritual shaming ceremonies. Picture a herd of neighbors showing up with buckets of mud and feathers, and you're the unwilling centerpiece. Talk about a divine humiliation. You try to steel yourself against the pressure, but the farmer's gaze is like a hawk watching for the slightest twitch. You find yourself double-checking every move, even when the cows seem content grazing. Every moo sounds like a ticking clock. Despite the tension, there's an odd respect building. This farmer, gruff as he is, respects hard work and determination. You realize this is a man who understands the land and its creatures better than any oracle ever could. His warnings aren't just threats. They're lessons forged in years of survival. So you take a deep breath and remind yourself gods might be immortal, but even immortals have to prove themselves in the dusty fields once in a while. Just when you think the day can't get any more taxing, enter the mischievous calf, the tiny whirlwind of trouble that single-handedly threatens to unravel your carefully assembled herd. This little rascal with wide, innocent eyes and legs too gangly for its own good has clearly decided you're its new favorite playmate, whether you like it or not. You spot it first, as it breaks away from the herd, darting toward a patch of wildflowers, oblivious to your frantic calls. You chase after it, heart pounding, not from divine excitement, but from the physical exertion that cowherding demands. The calf bounces around with the carefree energy of a child who just discovered sugar, ignoring your staff taps and whistles. The farmer's gruff voice cuts through the air like a whip. Get that calf back here, before it leads the whole herd astray. His impatience feels like a tangible force pressing down on you. But the calf seems determined to test every ounce of your patience. You remember an odd local tale about mischievous calves being harbingers of either good fortune or bad luck, depending on who's telling the story. Some said they were blessed by nymphs, while others claimed they were little tricksters sent to test the herder's mettle. You wonder which legend this one subscribes to. Historians still argue whether these folktales reflected real herding experiences, or were merely ways to explain the unpredictable nature of animals. Either way, you're about to learn the hard way. The calf's antics escalate, first tumbling into a shallow creek, then chasing a flock of startled birds, then narrowly missing a fence post as it zigzags wildly. You're sprinting, leaping, shouting, all while trying to maintain a semblance of authority. The sun beats down mercilessly, and your once pristine robes have been replaced by dirt-streaked tunics and sweat-soaked linen. You try everything, whistles, gentle coaxing, even a lullaby you mumble under your breath, hoping your godly voice might calm the little troublemaker. The calf pauses, blinking up at you as if pondering your sanity before bounding off again with renewed zest. The farmer's patience wears thin. If you can't handle a calf, how do you expect to control the herd, he snaps, sharpening your sense of urgency. You can't help but think back to your previous exploits, chasing after the sun chariot or charming muses with your lyre, and realize that this calf has just made you the most humble hero of all time. Quirky bit: some herders believed calves could recognize their keepers by scent alone, and would bond deeply if treated kindly, but only after a strict trial of patience and persistence. You're clearly failing the first test. Despite the chaos, a strange fondness grows in your chest for this little troublemaker, even as it tests your limits. It's a reminder that even in the humblest tasks life throws surprises that no godly power can always predict or control. Before you can catch your breath from chasing the mischievous calf, the real crisis hits. The entire herd decides to stage a mass breakout. One moment they're grazing peacefully, the next they're scattering like startled deer, disappearing over fences and down dirt paths. Panic surges through you, sharper than any bolt of lightning you've ever wielded. You shout and wave your staff frantically, trying to corral the stampede. But the cows have suddenly acquired a collective will of their own. Gertrude the old grump leads the charge, seemingly proud to test just how fast a stubborn cow can run when thoroughly spooked. You feel utterly powerless, like a child trying to hold back the tide. The farmer's bellow cuts through the chaos. Get out there and round them up now. His voice is both a command and a warning. Failure is not an option. You sprint after the herd, the dust kicking up in clouds around your feet, the sun hot on your back. Running through the fields, your lungs burn and your legs ache. You dodge branches, leap over fences, and try to predict where the herd might scatter next. Every moo echoes like a taunt, reminding you that this isn't a simple chore, it's a battle for control. Historians still argue whether herds in ancient times often escaped like this, or if such breakouts were rare disasters caused by neglect or wild animals. Right now you're betting on all too common. As you chase a particularly speedy calf that veers toward a thorny thicket, your thoughts flash to your sun chariot, how you once commanded the sky's light with ease, but now struggle to command a group of lowly cows. Humbling, to say the least. You remember a quirky fact you read once: some ancient herders would use trained dogs to help manage runaway cattle. Unfortunately, you don't have any divine dog companions here, just your staff and determination. With sweat stinging your eyes and breath coming in ragged gasps, you manage to corner a few strays near a shallow creek. Slowly, you begin the painstaking process of coaxing them back, using every trick in your toolkit, from whistles to gentle words, and even the occasional bribing with fresh grass. By the time the sun begins to dip low, the herd is mostly back in place, though a few stubborn ones still wander the edges. You collapse against a fence post, muscles trembling with exhaustion, feeling the weight of the day settle deep into your bones. You can't help but chuckle to yourself. Of all the heroic tales you've ever been part of, this scramble to catch cows might just top the list for sheer chaos. Quirky tidbit. In some rural traditions, lost cows were said to be lured back by playing a particular flute tune believed to calm even the wildest beasts. You make a mental note to learn a flute for next time, though. Given your current track record, you might just end up losing that too. Despite the fiasco, you're starting to respect the humble art of cowherding, the patience, the quick reflexes, and the grit required to keep these creatures from turning the fields into chaos. You can't help but feel the sting of contrast as your mind drifts between myth and mud. Here you are, Apollo, the radiant sun god, the bringer of light and prophecy, now reduced to chasing after grumbling cows and navigating thorny fields. The gulf between the legends and this dusty reality couldn't be wider. In the myths, you're the dazzling hero riding across the sky in a chariot pulled by fiery horses, your golden hair blazing and your lyre singing to the heavens. Yet in this very field, the sun beats down mercilessly as you wrestle with stubborn beasts, your robes caked with dirt, and your patience wearing thin. It's a humbling reminder that even divine beings aren't immune to the everyday grind. Historians still argue whether Apollo's association with pastoral life and herding is symbolic or literal. Some see it as an allegory for the cyclical nature of seasons and life itself, while others believe the myths hint at older traditions where gods mingled directly with rural livelihoods. Either way, your present predicament has you thinking deeply about the intersection of myth and mundane. You recall tales where Apollo was credited not just with the sun, but also with the protection of flocks and herds. Ancient Greeks sometimes invoked him as a guardian of livestock, ensuring health and fertility. In a way, this cow-herding job isn't entirely out of character, just a much less glamorous version. The dichotomy feels almost comedic. As you wrestle a stubborn cow back into line, you imagine the muses whispering behind your back about your fall from grace. But beneath the humor lies an unexpected respect for the hard work of those who tend the land and animals day in and day out. Quirky bit. Some ancient rituals involved singing hymns to Apollo before leading the herd to pasture, blending divine praise with practical herding. You experiment with a few tentative verses, but the cows are less impressed than you hoped. Gertrude just gives you a sideways glance like she's heard better karaoke. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows over the field, and you realize that being a god here means embracing the earthiness of life, the sweat, the toil, and the occasional frustration. It's a side of existence often left out of the myths, but crucial nonetheless. You pause for a moment, leaning on your staff, listening to the low murmur of the herd and the distant calls of birds settling in for the night. This strange blend of divine legacy and earthly labor has shifted something inside you, a newfound humility and appreciation. As night approaches, you know the day's trials are far from over. But for now, there's a quiet satisfaction in simply standing among the herd, sunburnt and weary, but still standing. As the afternoon wanes, you recall an ancient cow-herding ritual the farmer mentioned in passing, a peculiar custom said to calm restless cattle and keep them from wandering too far. Desperate and curious, you decide to give it a try. After all, if music didn't soothe the herd earlier, maybe a ritual could do the trick. The ritual involves gathering a handful of fresh herbs, sage thyme, and a sprig of rosemary, then weaving them into a small wreath. You mumble an old prayer you half-remembered from your days as god of prophecy, invoking the spirits of the land and sky to bless the herd with calmness and safety. With the wreath in hand, you walk slowly among the cows, hoping your divine presence will add some oomph to the ceremony. The cows, ever the skeptics, mostly ignore your attempts, continuing to chew cud and flick their tails. Gertrude gives you a skeptical snort as if daring you to take this seriously. Historians still argue whether such rituals were common across different ancient cultures or isolated superstitions. Some say they were practical, using herbs known to repel insects or soothe animals, while others see them as symbolic acts meant to bind the community and nature. The moment you finish, a light breeze stirs, carrying the mingled scents of herbs and earth. Unexpectedly, the herd seems to settle, the restless calves lying down, the older cows grazing more placidly. You almost want to believe your ritual worked, though you suspect it might have been coincidence, or perhaps the herd was just as tired as you. Quirky tidbit. In some traditions, cowherds would also sprinkle sacred water, or even sing nonsense syllables believed to mimic the language of animals. You briefly toy with the idea of adding interpretive dance to your routine, but wisely hold back. The farmer passes by, eyeing your wreath and murmuring something about old wives' tales, but there's a slight softening in his usually stern gaze. Maybe he's a little impressed, or maybe he's just curious about your unorthodox methods. You feel a small thrill of accomplishment. Even if the ritual didn't transform you into a master herder, it's a reminder that sometimes ancient wisdom carries threads of truth, even if tangled in superstition. As the sun sets, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, you take a moment to breathe deeply. The earthy scent of herbs, the distant lowing of cows, the crunch of dry grass beneath your sandals. It's grounding a connection to a simpler world beyond divine glory. And yet in this simplicity, there's complexity, managing the needs of the herd, reading their moods, navigating their stubbornness, and finding harmony in chaos. You realize that this strange ritual, part magic and part practicality, mirrors your own journey, an uneasy balance of power, patience, and humility. Evening falls, and your limbs feel like they've been weighed down by stones. The sun's farewell light bleeds into the sky, casting long shadows that stretch across the dusty field. You sit against a worn fence post, dirt under your nails, and sweat still drying on your skin, pondering how a god's work might not be as glamorous as the myths suggest. Your muscles ache in ways you never imagined, especially around your calves and shoulders. Every movement reminds you that you're far from your usual divine form today. You're just a tired herder with a herd to manage, and a farmer breathing down your neck. It's oddly humbling, and you find yourself appreciating the quiet strength of mortal labor. You remember reading that ancient cowherds worked from dawn until dusk, their days marked by repetitive routines that demanded patience and resilience. No heroic battles or epic quests, just endless vigilance over creatures that often seemed more interested in mischief than obedience. Historians still argue whether the spiritual status of herders elevated their social standing in certain ancient communities, or if they were seen as mere laborers. Either way, it's clear their role was crucial to survival, and respect was earned through endurance rather than legend. As you watch the herd settle down for the night, you can almost hear their contented sighs, a soft chorus of low moos mingling with the chirping of crickets and the rustle of grass. It's a soothing soundtrack, far removed from the thunderous applause of Olympus, but comforting in its own way. Quirky tidbit. In some cultures, cowherds believe that talking gently to their animals could improve milk yield and keep the herd healthy. You try whispering a few soft words to Gertrude, half expecting a sarcastic moo in response. Your thoughts drift to the farmer, who today seemed less a gruff overseer and more a guardian of the land, a man shaped by the earth and its cycles. You wonder how many untold stories he carries beneath that stern exterior, stories of survival, loss, and quiet triumphs. Though exhaustion tugs at you, there's a strange peace in this simplicity, a rhythm that connects you to a timeless dance of nature and nurture. It's not the life of a god, but perhaps it's a necessary counterbalance, a lesson in humility and perseverance. As night deepens, you feel the weight of the day melt into a calm acceptance. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but for now, you let the gentle night sounds lull you, grateful for this strange grounding experience. The farmer's patience, like the dwindling light, is running thin. As dusk settles, he calls you over with that same gravelly voice, heavier now with an edge sharper than any scythe in the fields. One last task, he says, eyes narrowing. This isn't just about keeping the herd together, it's about proving you're fit for this work. Fail, and it's over. You swallow, hard heart thumping as you realize the gravity of this final challenge. No more mistakes allowed. The farmer's stern ultimatum hangs in the air like a guillotine's blade, and you're the unfortunate one standing beneath it. Your task: lead the herd to a new pasture across a rocky slope, a route known for its tricky footing and unpredictable cows. It's the ultimate test of skill, patience, and nerve. You can almost hear the echoes of past herders who faced the same trial, their successes and failures whispered in the wind. Historians still argue whether such trials were common rites of passage for herders in ancient times or later romanticized tales. Either way, the tension feels real enough to send a shiver down your spine. You prepare, gripping your staff tighter, heart pounding as you step into the fading light. The herd shifts nervously, sensing the change. You begin the slow, careful trek, mindful of every hoof placement and wary of sudden spooks. Halfway up the slope, a sudden misstep sends a young cow stumbling, its panic threatening to set off another runaway. You leap into action, your divine reflexes kicking in, steadying the animal before it can hurt itself or others. The farmer's voice rings in your ears, but this time tinged with something like respect. Quirky bit. Some herders carried small bells to signal the herd's movement or alert others to danger. You wish you had one, imagining the jingling adding a comical soundtrack to your struggle. Despite the pressure, you find a strange rhythm, the steady shuffle of hooves, the low murmurs of the herd, and your own focused breathing. For a moment, you feel a flicker of connection, as if you're part of something larger than just a job or a myth. The sun dips below the horizon, bathing the pasture in twilight's gentle glow. You finally lead the herd safely to their new home, exhausted but triumphant. The farmer gives a curt nod, his expression unreadable, but you swear there's a glimmer of approval there. As night falls fully, you realize this final task has changed. You sharpened your sense of responsibility, deepened your respect for the humble art of herding, and reminded you that even gods must prove their worth on earthly terms. Just when you think you might finally catch a break, the farmer throws you an unexpected curveball: the Great Cow Race. It's a local tradition, a test of speed, wit, and stamina that pits herders against one another in a lively contest to see who can guide their cows the fastest through a twisting course peppered with natural obstacles. You blink, incredulous. Racing cows. You're more used to the steady, solemn pace of divine errands, not the frantic scramble of rural sport. But the farmer's expression leaves no room for negotiation. Win this, and you'll earn respect around here. Lose, well, you can guess. Historians still debate whether these races were ancient customs or later inventions romanticizing rural life. But either way, you're now thrust into the heart of the competition, adrenaline surging through your veins like never before. The starting signal sounds a sharp whistle, and the herd bolts forward, hooves pounding against hard earth. You sprint alongside, trying to steer the cows through narrow paths, around gnarled trees and over slippery rocks. The dust swirls around you, filling your mouth and nose, but there's no time to slow down. The herd's unpredictable nature adds chaos to the race. Some cows dart left, others right. Calves stumble and bounce back up, their youthful energy both a blessing and a curse. Your staff becomes a baton, guiding, nudging, and sometimes begging for cooperation. Quirky tidbit. In some ancient regions, cow races were believed to bring good fortune for the coming season, with winners often honored in local feasts or ceremonies. You secretly hope the farmer might throw in a celebratory meal if you survive this. The race tests not just your speed, but your ability to think on your feet, literally. You dodge branches, leap over fallen logs, and bark orders with a mix of desperation and determination. Your lungs burn, your legs scream, but you push on. Amid the chaos, you catch sight of other herders, their faces flushed with effort and competitiveness. And you realize this is more than a race. It's a community bonding ritual, a shared trial that cements the ties between man, animal, and land. As you near the finish line, the herd is thinned but intact. With one final burst of energy, you guide them across the goal, breath ragged but triumphant. The farmer's rare smile, however brief, feels like a warm beam cutting through the evening chill. You can't help but think this wild race so far from the sunlit halls of Olympus has shown you a new kind of glory, the messy, sweaty, stubborn glory of mortal life. After the exhausting race, you barely have time to catch your breath before one of the calves slips away, turning your victorious moment into a frantic game of hide-and-seek. The little troublemaker darts through thickets and patches of wildflowers, leading you deeper into the countryside than you've ever ventured during your cowherding stint. As you follow the world around, you transforms. The air grows cooler, filled with the scent of pine and fresh earth. You pass bubbling streams and ancient stone markers, remnants of forgotten times. This accidental detour reveals a side of rural life, steeped in mystery and quiet beauty, far from the dusty fields and grumpy farmer. Historians still argue whether wandering calves like this were common enough to inspire local legends about lost spirits or protective guardians of the land. Some say these stories helped herders stay vigilant, while others believe they simply added color to the routine. You find yourself enchanted by the peaceful isolation, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the soft murmur of distant wildlife. The stray calf pauses by a small grove, looking back at you with those wide, trusting eyes. You realize that despite all the chaos, these creatures have a simple wisdom and connection to the land that even gods can learn from. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient herders believed that calves who wandered alone were touched by nature's spirits and could bring luck or misfortune depending on how they were treated. You resolve to treat this little wanderer with extra care. This unexpected journey through the countryside slows your frantic pace, inviting you to reflect on the deeper rhythms of life that govern both mortal and divine realms. Away from the pressures of herding and the farmer's watchful eyes, you sense a moment of calm and clarity. You gently gather the calf, speaking softly as you prepare to lead it back. The weight of the day's trials feels lighter now, replaced by a quiet appreciation for the land's subtle gifts. As you make your way back to the main pasture, the sun dips low, casting long shadows and bathing the world in golden light. You carry with you a new understanding that sometimes the unexpected detours are the most enlightening parts of any journey. With the herd safely back and the day winding down, your thoughts turn to the lessons of those who came before the ancient herdsmen, whose lives intertwined with the land in ways both practical and profound. You ponder how they managed these vast, sometimes unruly animals without the divine powers you once took for granted. The tools you wield, the staff, the whistle. The charms are echoes of their ingenuity passed down through generations. These early herders developed a deep understanding of animal behavior, weather patterns, and the delicate balance between nurture and control. It wasn't just about brute strength, but subtle observation and patience. Historians still argue whether the pastoral lifestyle was primarily a means of survival, or if it carried deeper cultural and spiritual significance. Many ancient societies revered the herders as custodians of the earth's fertility and prosperity, blending the practical with the sacred. You recall tales from various cultures where herders were respected as seers or shamans, their close bond with animals granting them insight into nature's secrets. Some even claimed that the movements of livestock could foretell seasonal changes or warn of impending danger. Quirky tidbit. In some traditions, herders would mark cattle with symbolic patterns, almost like ancient tattoos, to ward off evil or claim ownership. Think of it as early branding with a dash of mysticism. You wonder if Gertrude would appreciate a celestial star painted on her hide. Reflecting on these ancient practices, you realize your current struggles are part of a timeless story, a dance between human or divine and beast, between order and chaos. The herder's wisdom wasn't just about control, but about coexistence, a lesson you're slowly beginning to understand. As twilight deepens, you stand among the herd, feeling the weight of history settle softly around you. The sun's last light fades, but the bonds forged in this dusty field linger between you. The animals, the land, and the countless souls who tended them before. In this quiet moment, you sense that even the gods can learn from the humble earth, its rhythms and rituals weaving through the ages, teaching lessons that no myth can fully capture. Night wraps the pasture in a soft, velvety darkness, punctuated by the twinkle of distant stars. The herd settles, lowing gently as they lie down in the cool earth. You lean on your staff, fatigue heavy, but tempered by a strange sense of accomplishment. Today was more than a test of strength. It was a lesson in patience, humility, and connection. The farmer approaches quietly, his gruff demeanor softened by the cloak of night. He nods curtly, a silent acknowledgement of your effort. No grand praise, no divine fanfare, just a simple gesture that speaks volumes. In this world, respect is earned not through divine lineage but through grit and perseverance. You catch your breath and look up at the sky. The same stars that watched over your mythical exploits now witness your earthly toil. It's humbling and oddly comforting to realize that the heavens don't judge, but simply observe, steady and eternal. Historians still debate the role of pastoral work in ancient spirituality, with some arguing that tending flocks was seen as a sacred duty, a bridge between humans and gods. Others believe it was purely practical, the foundation of survival with no mystical overlay. Tonight you feel both truths intertwine. Quirky tidbit. Some ancient herders believed that the stars themselves were the souls of departed cattle watching over their herds from the night sky. You smile, imagining Gertrude's grumpy face among the constellations, perhaps the stubborn bull in the mix too. You take a moment to appreciate the subtle symphony around you, the rustling leaves, the murmurs of the herd, the distant hoot of an owl. It's a lullaby of the earth itself, soothing and unpretentious. As your eyes grow heavy, you realize this day has changed you. Not just as a god or a herder, but as a traveler in a world that demands respect for both the grand and the humble. With a last glance at the peaceful herd, you allow the night to cradle you, ready for whatever the next day brings. Dawn arrives quietly, the horizon painted with soft hues of pink and gold. The cool morning air carries the scent of dew-kissed grass and earth, a fresh start after the trials of yesterday. You rise slowly, muscles aching, but spirits strangely lifted. Today is your final chance to prove yourself, to show that even a god can endure the humble work of a herder. The farmer hands you a simple leather satchel filled with freshly cut herbs and grains. Use it wisely, he says, voice rough but not unkind. You nod, feeling the weight of responsibility settle into your bones once more. As you walk through the fields, the herd stirs awake, their movements slow but purposeful. You feel a quiet connection with them now, a bond forged through shared struggle and patience. It's no longer just about control, but about trust, a fragile thread weaving you and these creatures together. Historians still argue whether ancient herders saw their work as sacred or simply necessary for survival. But in this moment, the line blurs. Your hands, once accustomed to the lyre and bow, now move with practiced care, scattering grains and herbs to soothe and nourish. You pause by a quiet stream, watching the reflection of dawn ripple across the water. The world feels vast and full of possibility, even in these simple tasks. You realize that greatness isn't always about grand deeds or divine power. It's often found in the small, steady acts that sustain life. Quirky tidbit. Some pastoral cultures believed that morning rituals like feeding the herd at first light ensured protection and prosperity for the entire community. You find yourself humming a tune, a lullaby for the earth and its creatures. As the sun climbs higher, you lead the herd through gentle pastures, their movements calm and coordinated. The farmer watches from a distance, a rare smile breaking his usual stern facade. You feel a quiet pride swell within you, not the blinding glory of Olympus, but a steady, enduring warmth. This day, this work has humbled you and taught you lessons no prophecy ever could. The time comes to part ways. The farmer offers a firm handshake, an unspoken acknowledgement of your journey. You nod, knowing this chapter closes, but its lessons linger. As you gaze back at the peaceful herd, you whisper a silent thanks for the earth, the animals, and the unexpected path that led you here. Slow the pace now. The sun's climb is gentle, a soft glow spilling through the window of your mind's eye. The hectic chase, the dusty fields, the grumpy cows, they fade like a distant dream. You breathe in this calm, the quiet moments after a long day's work, where the earth hums beneath your feet and the sky stretches wide and endless. Remember the feel of the soft grass brushing your hands, the faint scent of herbs woven into the morning air, the low murmur of contented cows settling down as night fell. These simple things, unremarkable yet profound, hold the weight of centuries. You've journeyed from divine heights to humble pastures, from blazing sun chariots to whispering winds. And in this contrast, you find a new kind of strength, a gentle resilience that doesn't roar, but endures, a steady flame that warms without blinding. Let your mind slow further. The stars overhead twinkle softly, each one a story, a memory, a promise. The world is vast, mysterious, and full of quiet wonders waiting just beyond the horizon. Rest now, knowing that even gods learn humility and patience in the most unexpected ways. The herd may roam, the earth may turn, but you carry these lessons within, a light steady and sure. Good night, sleep well and dream gently.